Welcome back, everyone, to the last 7 days. I'm Bryan Spellman, and this is
Andrew Sparrow.
who pointed at a map. Fantastic. And this is the show where we talk about some of the exciting articles that have happened in the news recently that relate, or at least we think relate, to the product lifecycle. So Andrew, what do you have for us today?
Okay, so there's a lot been happening over the last few days, but one thing I bumped into, and it may be a little old, is Tesla. Tesla have put together the first single component chassis. Amazing. Normally a chassis, as we probably know, needs about 400 parts to it. So that's a big shift, big impact on kind of design, simulation, impact, sustainability. Manufacturing processes arguably are much simplified, even though obviously it's going to need some real die casting, some extensive die casting going on. So that's what I've come across. It's impressive.
And how do you feel that that's going to relate to the lifecycle world?
Well, massively. I think the design side of things, the simulation side of things. So product lifecycle and CAD's going to need to adapt to support the creation of a less complex, or arguably could be more complex, large cast parts, facilitate more integration, I think, into the overall vehicle design. So that's a big part of PLM. You could push it out into supply chain. Obviously, it's going to have an impact on the supply chain. You could argue less suppliers, of course. Quality control is going to be huge. You're now dealing, rather than 400 individual quality issues and then integration and connectivity, you're actually dealing with a single piece that you need to be stress testing consistently. A lot going on in the PLM and in manufacturing to have a big impact. What exactly have you found over the last few days?
So Frank Rubio is going to have spent 371 days in space. He's going to have been somebody who has spent over a year in space. He's just 47, so 1/47th of his life.
He was in the ISS.
He was in the ISS. He is the first American and the 7th person overall to spend more than a year in space. And I think this is fascinating because we're entering a world where, I mean, every week we have more news about space, more news about the possibility of us going to the moon, going to Mars, sending humans out and out and out into space. And things like this are just proving that we can do it. We can make this happen. We have the technology that is in large part thanks to a lot of the advances, not just in the technology itself, but in the systems we use for product lifecycle, for design, for prototyping, for maintenance, for everything, proving that we can actually design systems that survive in space so that humans can survive in space.
And that's before you, I mean, the other amazing things, I mean, you're talking kind of terraforming and all those good things, but I think on top of that, you've also got the immediate term kind of zero gravity that we cannot replicate on Earth as much as we try, that allows us to produce medication, et cetera, just through that environment. So amazing new world.
The other exciting piece of news is that 3 major automakers, BMW, Ford, and Honda, have formed a new company that is inviting other automakers to join. They announced an equally owned company called ChargeScape that is focused on creating a single, cost-effective platform to connect EV drivers, automakers, and utility companies. They're hoping to use this to alleviate the need for individual automakers to interact separately with each electrical utility. They want to be able to create a grid where North American users can have a pool of energy across EV batteries. It's going to give more power, literally and figuratively, to EV owners with charging at home, because they can have financial benefits for replenishing during off-peak hours. They can possibly give energy back to the grid if they have solar systems at home. This whole system of innovation where these 3 companies, I think, probably came together and said, you know, we want more people to have access to EVs and to make this more of something that makes sense. And in order for that to be there, there's got to be an infrastructure, and that infrastructure needs to be for charging, so it's easier to charge, which is the biggest reason why a lot of people are like, I can't get one right now. It's too logistically crazy to make it work. So these 3 big, dare I say, competitors have formed a company that's going to help all of them.
Yep. You will. Today, I'm your competitor. Tomorrow, I'm your friend. I mean, that's just the way collaboration works these days, isn't it?
And then your competitor afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. That's how it rolls. Yeah. But no, you're right. Infrastructure, boy, oh boy, oh boy, do we need that big time. EV or hydrogen, maybe. We'll see. It's interesting you mentioned selling back into the grid. So obviously that's the Tesla model, isn't it? So you've got that ability to buy that Tesla battery, plug it into your home, use that solar power that they're trying to kind of promote, and then you can sell that back to the grid. I think that's the Tesla battery wall or something like that. I don't know. Dan probably knows better. He's in the automotive space a lot more than I am on a daily basis. How beautiful is that segue into Dan Wilson?
Dan Wilson here. Friday fun history of CAD, PLM, and CAE in the auto industry.
That's him. You are that man.
So, Dan, what news do you bring for us that you have found exciting in the automotive industry this week?
Yeah, so smaller EV startups, they're trying to find their traction, not with their tires, but with sales. Yeah. Okay. So Rivian bounced back in July and August with 2,750 new registrations for its R1 vehicles, and Lucid had a mere 350 for its Air sedan, and then VinFast was around 20 for its V F8 crossover. Fisker had about 30 for their new Ocean.
That's doing good, that Fisker. Have you seen it? It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Really good job. Solar panels on the top range model. Really cool.
Yeah, beautiful. So while the bigger ones in the industry for EV, like Rivian and so forth, the other ones are seem to be struggling a little bit.
So what's the difference between the R1T and the R1S?
Good question.
You don't know?
Yeah, I think it's there's a couple things there. I think the battery, I think it all goes back to the battery before charging is longer.
Okay. Okay. The reason I ask is that apparently this is the first time they've done it. Is they've released a software update that is actually adjusting ride quality. So rather than that, up front by the vehicle and it's already preset, they're actually downloading that straight into the vehicle. And what I'm seeing is they've got a ride of soft sand, which means you're going nowhere. I guess
like you just sit there. Bed.
yeah, you just sit there. It's quicksand. You can't move. And snow. Who wants a ride that's snow? I couldn't think of anything worse than driving in the snow. Yeah. I did. When I was in Switzerland, I actually tried to drive in the snow. Talk about looking like an expat as I got stuck going up a hill. And the guy knocks on my window and he said, "You're not from around here, are you?" I said, No, I'm not from here. He said, "Yeah, everybody else has got snow chains except you. Let me push you to one side so the rest of the world can get by and go to the work." So that's what happened. Anyway. Thought you'd be interested to hear that. Not a lot, but
it's good.
Sorry, Dan.
So
I killed it.
Back to the startups. So they're just trying to find their way. So
just like Andrew was trying to find his way. It was really a good segue, Andrew.
I thought so. Yeah. Yep. You got it. So there you go. Thanks, Dan.
I'm going to show you a piece of high-tech wizardry right here.
Hey, guys.
That was amazing. Dan just disappeared and was replaced by our next field reporter, who is reporting live from somewhere in Mexico, or as I believe he likes to call it, Tequila Land.
That's right, sir. That's right. Here from the Tequila Land, trying to beat the boys for reshoring manufacturing, high-tech electronics manufacturing. So here it is. How are you guys?
Doing good. How you doing, Joseph? Hola.
We have mariachis, we have tequila, and we have a lot of electronics manufacturing. The other day, I was reading a new article from Forbes Mexico,
Mm-hmm.
and looks like everything with this movement of reshoring is growing up, right? So all the eyes in the world are looking at Mexico. Why? Because, well, we have a strategic location, right, to manufacture. We have really good labor. We have expertise and know-how in do the
Yep.
things in electronics. So it's really good to see how China, Canada, Spain, and of course, all of them trying to go to the American market, right, with manufacturing, with different kind of products. But in the US, guys, I'm not an expert in geopolitics, but looks like the US is having different kind of situations with other countries. So that's why the border of Mexico is growing up.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, I think reshoring to Mexico makes so much sense. I think there's a couple of adapts, one to compete with the somewhat recent Chip Act brought in by our dear friend and our dear leader of the modern world, Joe Biden, brought in, called the Chip Act. So I think you have to compete with that. So obviously there's a lot of incentives to bring them back on shore to the US. So I'm not sure how Mexico can compete with that. So that's interesting. And I think secondly, you've got China, you've got India, you've got that big populations, highly competitive domestic environments moving into, maybe a little more relaxed in Mexico. And how do you compete with that intensity that you would see in those locations and to bring it back near shore as well? So I'm really excited to see how Mexico can compete and compare for near shore manufacturing. I don't know. What do you think, Joseph? Do you can compete with that?
That's right. It's a big challenge. The other day I was doing a video, some content, talking more about this. And that is not like, hey, here I'm a Mexican company, I want your investment and I can produce your product. It's not like that, It's a big journey to cross and be competitive and start doing the different things for the US. And yeah, talking about the Chip Act, well, we have also a big journey to cross. And in Mexico is bringing a lot of incentives to do that. Everything is about collaboration.
Okay.
We need to collaborate with other countries to do it, because it's not like over here we have the labor, we have expertise and things like that, right? But we have a huge and big opportunity for digitalization and technologies. So right there is where we can improve. We can execute best practices powered by new technologies, I think. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Let's go Mexico. I think it makes so much sense. We're right, same time zone, just over the border, as we well know. Exciting.
Yeah, that's it. Really good zone to be right now and start expanding our networking.
Speaking of soaring to new heights, Dan does have one more piece of high-flying, exciting news for us here.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So
is it about strikes?
No.
We were talking about that last week, and it's kind of really kicked off this week, hasn't it?
It has. It's interesting.
You're kind of up that way. I mean, are you seeing an impact over there? What's the talk over there?
I did read that I think some of the automakers were a little confused. They braced for strikes at the wrong plants. So there was striking auto workers. It's some of the America's largest auto manufacturers. The union strike
outside of a Toyota plant.
Yeah, they Ford, GM, and Stellantis basically did this. They were striking at the wrong plants. So apparently they didn't get a memo of some kind. There was a little bit of a cat and mouse game between the UAW and the companies.
So here's one for you, Dan, and I've got to throw this your way. A friend of mine sent this over to me. He says, This was a message from GM, its team members. They were told they were paying poverty wages. And GM's response was, it's simply not true. They said, in our current proposal, we are offering a 20% wage increase, including temporary employees who make up only 6 to 10% of the workforce. That means that 85% of the current represented employees would earn a base wage of $82,000 a year. Okay, so not bad. In contrast, the average medium household income in 9 areas where GM has a major assembly plant is $52,000. So interesting statement that's responded back. I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm on the wrong side at this one, but I don't know.
Yeah, they want 4-day work weeks. They're coming up with some really interesting curveballs.
Yeah.
So,
oh well, the age of capitalism. Here we go.
So with that,
so what's this flying high stuff then?
It's almost like the Jetsons, right? It's getting to the point where we're getting to that. So see reality in 2025 here. People may ride in a flying car as early as 2025, and so it comes from Joby Aviation, a California-based electric aircraft maker, said it will invest $500 million to mass produce air taxis in Dayton, Ohio. So the company expects to deliver 500 electric flying taxis a year and plans to fly passengers as early as 2025. So getting back to the product life cycle, they have to produce these at least 500 a year. So that's getting into the product life cycle pretty heavily, getting out there faster, getting things to market, and getting these out.
And they're going to start in Dayton, Ohio?
They're starting in Dayton, Ohio.
Why Dayton, Ohio? Do you know?
I believe that's aviation. That's the aviation hub there, isn't it? For manufacturing.
Right. I mean, I know there's some museums around there, et cetera, et cetera. So, interesting.
Yeah, they get passed pretty quickly through the FAA.
Yeah. Okay. So that's really good. So it's not a bad area because it's not heavily populated. So it's a really good test bed, I guess, isn't it, as well? So
yeah. So people are going to be commenting on UFOs. I think I just saw a UFO. Getting back to the Tesla chassis, Andrew.
Yeah.
When you were talking about that, Tesla's actually figured it out to be a little lighter. That was a pretty heavy chassis. With all the batteries lined up at the base there. For sustainability purposes, they figured out how to make it a little lighter, which takes a lot of the carbon footprint reduction.
100%. And because you've got less components, less welding, less energy, yada. Absolutely right. Yeah, big impact.
I did read that it's like taking 10,000 cars off of the highway during rush hour.
Wow.
That much carbon.
Yeah. Less wastage as well, isn't it? Right? Through cutting. So I was thinking, so that's definitely an impact on PLM, product life cycle. But I was also thinking from a manufacturing perspective, because this first one out is not going to be the last one out. It's going to be continually improving. So manufacturing MES, MOM is going to need to be pulling data all the time for continuous improvement, feeding it back into PLM, digital continuity, man.
Because hearing the last comment from Dan about Tesla, about this commitment of production, the other day I was visiting a company in Guadalajara. Okay, so they are running the project. Okay, they are a tier 1. Okay, they are the manufacturing projects that they have is for OEMs, which is Tesla, those kind of brands. And right there, the project is Tesla. And they are producing the electronic boards, the PCBs, and other devices for the car, which is really interesting because talking to the engineering manager, he was talking about how this project is growing up and the numbers are rising up, everything, So that I think can confirm the last comment from Dan and Andrew. And it's really exciting to see how everything is getting connected and how the supply chain between tier one and OEMs could be connected in some point, collaborating through MES, MOM systems, and different kind of platforms, So yeah, that's it, I guess.
Thanks everybody for joining us on the last 7 days ish. Here.